Invite everyone to stand for the pledge of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I saw what you were doing. Earl was trying to pull the chair out. Welcome everyone to the September 18th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of September 4th, 2019? Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Financial report and payment of the bills. We have a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Only discussion, I just wanted to read out currently to the board. Currently we have in our general fund $1,593,063. In our water fund we have $2,083,754. In our sewer fund we have $7,882,857. And in our major facility fund, we have $3,447,177. Also, our wastewater on our sewer plant that we did back a few years ago, we borrowed a little over $20 million, and we currently have that debt down to $9,596,240. Going in the right direction. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, Lou, I'm going to bump around the agenda a little bit, and let's talk about the drug-free school zones.
Resolution R13. Resolution R13, 2019, drug-free school zone map. Resolution of the Mayor and Commissioner of the Town of Elkton providing for the adoption of the Town of Elkton drug-free zone, school zone map depicting the location and boundaries of drug-free school zones and making an official record of the location and boundaries of such zones. Whereas Section 5-627 Criminal Law, Article Annotated Code of Maryland prohibits a person from manufacturing, distributing, dispensing, or possessing with intent to distribute a controlled dangerous substance as set forth under this section, including but not limited to in, on, or within 1,000 feet of real property owned by or leased to an elementary school, secondary school, or County Board of Education used for elementary and secondary education. And whereas in order to enforce the Town of Elkton drug-free school zone, the Mayor and Commissioners have adopted the attached Town of Elkton drug-free school zone map attached herewith, which is a copy of the map separate. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Commissioner of the Town of Elkton hereby adopt Town of Elkton drug-free school zone map, which may be revised periodically, shall be maintained as official record. I would mention that this was sponsored by the Elkton Police Department in order to enforce this law, and a violation is a felony, and the first offense is 20 years, second offense is 40 years and $40,000 in fine. So it's a pretty significant violation of law. And I would say this drug-free school zone map is a particle or an element necessary for the police to enforce this particular law.
Perfect. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R13-2019 drug-free school zone?
Yes, I do. I so move.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion from the board?
I have one question. Does this become effective tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Fantastic. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, it is 7:05. Tonight we have a public hearing on ordinance 5-2019, amending the Elkton zoning ordinance regarding the planned unit development or PUD regulations and provisions for the following articles. Tonight, it is a public hearing. You'll have an opportunity to talk this evening in the audience in regards to the PUD definitions and interpretations. You'll have tonight, after we introduce the ordinance for introduction only. The town board will not be voting on this ordinance tonight, just to let everyone know how the process works. Tonight will be introduced. It'll be introduced with amendments or comments, however the planning board suggested for Monday evening. It'll come in front of this board. We'll make a motion for introduction after we hear everyone speak in regards to it. Then at the meeting on October 2nd, the board may vote on this, on the language. Then at that point, if it was a positive vote, that it will become a law in the town of Elkton 20 days after October 2nd. So with that, I just want to let everyone know that the cameras are running. So if there's any discussion in the back, the camera will pick you up. So if you want to talk nice about the mayor and commissioners, you can, and we'll be happy to listen to that. So Jean, I'm going to put you on to read the ordinance into the record with your comments.
So,
Gene, we might want to move Lewis's microphone over to you if we could.
the Elkton Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 16th to consider amendments to the following sections of the Elkton zoning ordinance, which I'll go over briefly with the board and summarize each of these articles. Article 2, basic definitions and interpretations. Article 9, zoning districts. Article 10, permissible uses. Article 11, plan developments. Article 12, supplementary use regulations. Article 13, density and dimensional regulations. And Article 19, amendments. For the record, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the proposed amendments with some additional notations at that meeting. So the first article is Article 2, basic definitions. These articles were published on the town's website, and there have been some amendments to the definitions. Article 2 has a minor correction under Section 1, Article 2, basic definitions and interpretations, Part 1, definitions, Section 1, definitions of basic terms. There was a correction on that where it stated that said property is to be developed with a primary focus on no less than 2 types of housing units and low-impact commercial uses, low-impact residential uses. That's corrected to be commercial uses. It was supposed to be commercial. It's a typo in that. That's Article 1, Article 2. Then there's a recommendation that you have on section, on that same section for small mixed-use planned unit developments. There's a recommendation for an additional language in there to make it consistent with language elsewhere in the Article 11 details for that, where we state that the, and actually it's, I think, memorialized in a letter from Lisa Blackson, our other attorney, that for a small PUD, it should state that the property must be under single ownership at the time of the PUD concept plan application, and that's for the small PUD. It doesn't state that in the definition, but it does state it elsewhere. In order for consistency, we want to make sure the definitions, both in the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations, include that language. And that's just clarification for that. So then the next item is Article 9, zoning districts, and it describes the intent of the zoning district. I don't believe there was any changes to that. The next article was Article 9. Article 10, which is the table of permissible uses. And I believe that has not changed with the exception of one item. And there was something else I wanted to point out with Article 10, the table of permissible uses. There was a separate request to amend that portion of the zoning ordinance to allow indoor recreation in the business industrial zones. So that's sort of in the same amendment. It was a separate vote, it was approved by the planning, recommended approval by the planning commission, but it was a separate request by another entity to allow that. And that's to enable things like gymnastic studios and that sort of thing to go in industrial parks, which anyone who's had children in gymnastics, and that's usually where they are. There was some other issues with the table of permissible uses. The applicant representing the developer had asked for something, wanted to ensure that for consistency with light industrial, that storage within completely enclosed structures be permitted under the large PUDs. Right now, we didn't allow any kind of storage, but with light industrial, a lot of times you get warehousing as sort of part of that. So the applicant requested that we allow that as a permissible use for under the large PUDs. And Ms. Blackson, who commented on that? She recommended it by special exception.
For a large PUD.
For a large PUD only. She also had a couple of other recommendations for this type of for a large PUD to allow. The planning commission wanted to allow, I believe, gas stations and car washes in the large PUDs, but in taking a closer look at it, our attorney, Lisa, had recommended that they should only be allowed by special exception or special exception with conditions.
And again, only in large PUD.
And only in large PUDs. Yes, sometimes you get like a large convenience store that might have gas pumps or one of these little car wash things there, and they wanted to allow that. If you're going to allow the convenience store, then more than likely they're going to want a car wash or a gas station. So by special exception, large PUDs only.
And the rationale behind that being that under a small PUD, it's primarily R2 and R3 underlying as far as the zone.
I think that was everything that was recommended by Ms. Blackson. You also had a copy of an email from Sean Davis at MRA that requested that warehousing and logistics be permitted in the large PUD. And I think Lisa had recommended that by special exception.
Okay.
Okay. Other than that, I don't believe there are any other changes to the permissible use table as shown. Any other changes?
My understanding is the planning commission
Oh, they did,
for the boarding houses.
oh, yeah, there was,
Heavy manufacturing.
heavy manufacturing is not permitted in either the small or the large PUDs.
Okay.
That was a recommendation by the planning commission. And boarding houses was something that was permitted under the original draft PUD language in 2013. And the planning commission didn't feel that a boarding house was something that was appropriate for a PUD. So we didn't, it wasn't in there, we put it in, and we're taking it back out here for boarding houses. So the next one is, there's no changes to 9. So, I'm looking at this in the format of the ordinance, and it's a different format from what I had printed out, so I'm kind of losing my space here. Okay, so Article 11. Article 11, you have copies of some of the proposed changes, required notice to adjacent property owners by certified mail. So applicants shall provide notice to all contiguous property owners no less than 10 days and no more than 30 days prior to the public hearing. and shall provide the town with proof of service of at least 5 days prior to said hearing. Additionally, the properties to be included in the PUD shall be posted per the Article 4 of the Town of Elkton zoning ordinance. PUD floating zone, I'm reading this because this was new language. The planning commission did approve. A PUD floating zone applicant shall provide the following to all contiguous property owners via certified mail or hand delivery. 1, floating zone PUD floating zone application. 2, notice of date, time, and location of any public hearings related to the same. Also, a floating zone applicant that simultaneously seeks approval of a concept plan shall provide the following to all contiguous property owners via certified mail or hand delivery. First one is a floating zone PUD floating zone application. The second is a PUD concept plan application. And the third is a complete list of any and all modifications from the town ordinances that are being requested by the applicant pursuant to section 11 of this article. And I'll explain that in a minute. And the fourth one is notice of the date, time, and location of any public hearings related to the same. So the applicant will be required to provide information where the project that they are proposing, if it deviates from the zoning ordinance, they have to explain that deviation. And they have to explain it in the letter of the property. They will also have to explain it to the planning commission. I can go, and that's a little bit further back in this ordinance, and I'll read that. So then, the PUDs are required to comply with, although we allow a variety and mixture of uses, they are required to comply with the permissible uses table. So not everything is permitted in a PUD that's in the ordinance. So the next section is, okay. So the application, in order to achieve, so if you're going to request modifications to this zoning ordinance, the applicant may request modification to any standards within sections 6 to 10 of this ordinance as part of the concept plan application. Any modifications not expressly disclosed in the applicant's application shall not be deemed approved until proper application and approval. In addition to the express inclusion of any modifications within the proposed PUD concept plan, applicants' requests for modifications shall include: 1, a statement contrasting the proposed modifications with the ordinance requirements that would otherwise control. 2, a statement identifying the public benefits of the proposed modifications as opposed to the development of the real property pursuant to the ordinance requirements that would otherwise control. 3, a statement and exhibits as to how the proposed modifications are utilized in like communities. 4, a statement identifying the existence of special conditions or circumstances, if any, that are unique to the real property and would require a modification. 5, a statement identifying whether the requested modifications are 1, the result of the applicant's own actions, and or 2, based upon conditions or circumstances which are self-created or self-imposed. And 6, a statement identifying why strict enforcement of the provisions of the relevant ordinance would be contrary to the public benefit. The reason this information's in here and this requirement's in here is because when we were drafting the PUD, the original idea was if there was any deviations from the standards in the ordinance, they would have to get a variance or some other type of waiver, but a variance more than likely from the Board of Appeals. And although PUDs are meant to be enable the planning commission to be flexible, you have to have standards for that flexibility. So it sort of puts the planning commission at a disadvantage if they're asked to waive certain requirements, and they want to know what the public benefit is here if they do waive them. So this language is sort of shadows what you're required to do when you want a variance before the Board of Appeals. It helps give the planning commission some structure and some criteria to consider when an applicant wants to deviate from the zoning ordinance for the size of yards they want to put in, the size of lots, setbacks, that sort of thing. They don't have to go to the Board of Appeals, but they sort of have to show the same information to the planning commission. So modifications shall not be granted solely on the grounds that a nearby real property parcel maintains non-conforming use. This, I'm almost done here. Procedure, if a PUD concept plan application with modifications accompanies a PUD floating zone application, then after a public hearing, the planning commission shall inform the mayor and commissioners that it approves the modifications in whole or in part. 2, does not approve the modifications, or 3, approves the modifications with conditions. The decision of the planning commission shall be conditioned upon the mayor and commissioner's approval of the PUD floating zone application. The PUD concept plan application with modifications is submitted subsequent to the approval of the PUD floating zone application. Then after after a public hearing, the planning commission may either grant approval of the modifications in whole or in part, 2, deny the modifications, and or grant the modifications with conditions. Any modification requested subsequent to approval of the PUD concept plan shall be resolved per the same process, and an applicant shall not be denied a modification solely because it was not requested within a PUD concept plan. Conditions to modifications. Upon granting modifications, the planning commission may condition approval of any modification on higher design standards, require any and all reasonable conditions it determines necessary to preserve and ensure the public benefit, impose such reasonable conditions as will ensure that the use of the property to which the modification applies will be as compatible as practicable with the surrounding properties. D, standard of review. After a public hearing under oath and consideration of input and reports from town departments and agents, the planning commission shall determine whether the proposed modifications, if any conditions, provide a greater public benefit than strict adherence to the relevant ordinances in consideration of the totality of the PUD. Any modifications requested within the critical area district shall be controlled by Article 5 of the Town of Elkton zoning ordinance. So then, that was only language. That's why I read that. So then we jump down to 14, residential requirements. Originally, we required in the draft plan, the draft ordinance, that 45% of the total dwelling units within a PUD shall be single-family detached. After discussing it with the other engineering firm and going back and forth, we decided to modify that to require 60% of the total dwelling units within a PUD shall be single-family detached dwellings, condominiums, and/or senior housing units. So what we wanted to do was encourage the type of housing you don't ordinarily see in the town, but we'd like to see more of. Under 16, architectural design standards, there was a question about the architectural features. We require higher level architectural features in a PUD, and the question was, should they be visible just from the street? Should they be from the front of the building, the side of the building? And we determined that all sides visible from and directly abutting a public street, so basically the fronts of the buildings. Also, facades, we require alternate siding styles and patterns to provide visual distinction in each unit. Alteration between siding, brick, and the request was to add stone. The applicant actually suggested we include stone in there, which is fine, to kind of change up the architectural features on a building. The original draft we developed, we currently allow 8 townhouses in a row. And there was some discussion as to whether we should break them up and make them smaller, so you don't end up with a wall effect. And so we had originally come up with 4 townhouses in a row maximum. And you know, after discussion back and forth, we realized that might have its own problems with a bunch of little 4-packs everywhere. So we came up with the idea of no more than 20% of row of townhouses can be more than can have 6 in a row, and more than 20% with 6, and more than 20% of the townhouses can have 5, and then the rest would be 4 units. So that way it breaks it up a little bit, adds visual interest. You don't end up with a wall of townhouses. The whole idea behind a PUD is you're getting something better than you would with conventional zoning. section in Article 11 is under Administrative Procedure 17E. Concept plan application. We require the concept plan to show everything on the plan that's required in Appendix A, the zoning ordinance, which is quite a few items. The applicant had requested that, that's fine, except for there was 2 items. One had to do with grading, that they said was a little much to have to do at a concept level, and continuity grading plans. And the other was concept stormwater management. They understand that stormwater management will have to be done before they can get the preliminary, this is required. But at a concept level, that we will set aside areas for stormwater, but they didn't want to do the calculations for the stormwater at that early level of approval. Our engineer did not have a problem with that. The other thing we changed with Chapter 11 was the appeals. We had crafted some appeals language, but I think we already cover appeals from the planning commission decisions and mayor and commissioners elsewhere in the ordinance and in the charter. So we didn't want to create any confusion with that. Article 12 is the supplementary use regulations, and that was one where we were eliminated the PUD from the boarding houses and bed and breakfasts, but it's included in all the other areas. Now, under section 28, residential structures, single-family attached townhouses and multifamily dwellings, we made that consistent with the language for townhouses. 20% 6 in a row, 20% 5 in a row, 60% 4 in a row. So it was just consistency with that. Our old ordinance had a section where for PUDs for apartments, under section 28, 2D2, we required 200 feet setback from the apartments to the right-of-way line of any public street or adjacent property lines in the PUD, and that's a little excessive. It's 50 feet in the ordinance if you build it to code, if you build it to the normal ordinance. So we wanted that to be consistent, so we changed that to 50 feet. Okay, just having you just changes in here. So that was 12. 13 was the density and dimensional regulations, and we just included PUD in that chart under minimum lot criteria, yard requirements, height, lot coverage, and density and intensity. It refers to a footnote that says dimensional regulations. The dimensional bulk regulations for individual uses in a PUD shall comply with the standards contained in Article 13 of the Town of Elkton zoning ordinance, dependent upon the proposed land use, residential, commercial, industrial, etc. The other thing is minimum open space is 25%, and the minimum tract size is 50 acres. What else is left? I think it's the last one is the amendments, right? They were attachments, that's why. Yeah, I don't believe there's any revisions to 19, which is, yeah, I'm under amendments, there's no changes to that. The rule was published on the website. I think that's everything. Is that on the subdivision? The subdivision.
Right.
That hasn't come up yet. This is just that ordinance. Those are the proposed changes to the ordinance that was posted on the website.
Okay.
Did you say that group homes were being removed?
No, boarding houses.
Oh, boarding houses. Group homes are special exception.
For the large group homes? 9 to 16? Is that the one you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 to 16 would be the special exception.
Gene, did you want to finish the other two?
That's actually a separate,
Is it a separate public hearing?
separate ordinance. It's on the same agenda,
Yeah.
but it's a separate ordinance. I can go into that next if you'd like.
Well,
I do that.
Okay. So the next thing is the subdivision regulations.
Okay, so this will be ordinance, what you're going to talk about now is ordinance 6-2019. Okay.
And the Elkton Planning Commission recommended approval of that. Of course, with basic definitions, same language for the small PUD where the land has to be contiguous, tract of land has to be contiguous. That language will be added in to be consistent with the zoning ordinance. Basic definitions and interpretations and general design requirements that are the same as what's posted, with the exception of the language to be consistent throughout the ordinance, the same has to be contiguous for the small PUD.
Okay.
And under single ownership.
And under single ownership.
And that's it?
That's it for that, and of course, then the other one is the industrial use, I'm sorry, the indoor recreation use in the industrial, so as a permitted use.
Okay, very
That's the
good.
3 sections of changes in the ordinance.
Very good. And I guess I had a couple of questions. I know that we started this process when I served on the board the first time. I think it was in 2000, one of the comprehensive plans, we talked about it. Gene and I was talking about it a little bit this evening. So it's been 19 years of working on this language, I guess, to a degree. But over the last, I think it really kicked back in 2010 when they had the next comprehensive plan. And I think again in 2013, I think the language came in front of the then mayor and commissioners, again, to work on this PUD language. And so I know we spent a lot of time on it, but just recently, what's your schedule been like working on
It's
this?
been several months, since July, I believe, it might be earlier than that, I'm not sure.
And I know what our billable hours are to the firm, so I know how many hours were spent there. But John and Dave, are you guys okay with the language as far as from a legal standpoint?
Yes, we've worked a number of months on this, and we've taken great strides to ensure that this ordinance, and we've looked at ordinances from all over the state of Maryland. We've spoken to council that have interacted with municipalities that have ordinances like this, right here in Cecil County. For instance, Perryville, who has a number of different PUDs. And we've looked at this, and we've included language to try and best give the people of the town of Elkton and the town the tools it needs to ensure that it can control what goes in there and provide a public benefit. And we think that this particular ordinance we've taken and crafted to best suit the town of Elkton.
And I think what's, we have to look at it as the town of Elkton is 8.5 square miles is the town of Elkton. And what we have to look at is there's an opportunity for PUDs not only to happen in our vacant lands, but also in redevelopment plans. So when we take this, we take it very seriously when we take a look at this. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments for Gene or council?
Gene, would you define group home for me?
The ordinance defines it. And that's something that's in our existing language in our zoning ordinance. It's not a new amendment to the ordinance. We have a couple different definitions. Group home, a home for not more than 16 people who have demonstrated a tendency towards alcoholism, drug abuse, mental illness, or antisocial or criminal conduct, together with not more than 2 people providing supervision and other services to such persons, all of whom live together as a single housekeeping unit. Such use may also provide housing for up to 24 months and case management services to help homeless households achieve stable permanent housing and as high a level of economic self-sufficiency as possible. Then there's a group home / handicapped or infirm home. Residents within a single dwelling unit for at least 4 but not more than 8 people who are physically or mentally handicapped or infirm, together with not more than 2 persons providing care or assistance to such persons, all living together as a single housekeeping unit. Persons residing in such homes, including the aged and disabled, principally need residential care rather than medical treatment. And then there's group home private. Group home means a residence in which individuals who have been or are under treatment for a mental disorder may be provided care or treatment in a home-like environment. A large private group home admits at least 9 but not more than 16 individuals. A small private group home admits at least 4 but not more than 8 individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, this is a public hearing, and I'm going to go over a little bit of the ground rules. We're going to talk specifically about the articles this evening. We're not going to discuss any projects. Now, at the end of the meeting, when it comes an opportunity at public comment time, you're more than welcome to talk about anything that you want on behalf of the town of Elkton. But during the process of these 2 ordinances, Ordinance 5 and Ordinance 6-2019, I want it specific to the definitions of the PUD, not per any type of project that's out there. So in an organized fashion, I'm going to try to go around the room to this side and come around to the room to the other side. If you want to come up, you got to come up to the podium. Please sign your name, your address, and we'll try to give everyone 5 minutes to speak if you want to speak for 5 minutes. So with that, I'm going to start at this side of the room. Do you have any? Yes, come on down. You're going to be the first tonight, so I need you to sign in. And your name?
Christopher Trudeau. I'm in 48 Dumpster Drive now.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things with the articles we discussed the other night was, for instance, the part of the article, I'm trying to get the exact one, I think it was 10 or 11, that deals with the warehousing, the heavy manufacturing and warehousing. Now, your ordinance before this change had that the requirement was you can store goods as long as you're selling those goods. Like an example, a Walmart would have a storage room in back, right, to restock the stuff. Trucks would come, deliver those things, right? Warehousing was not allowed. Okay? And the developer, of course, was a Goosen, wanted the warehousing put in there, and that they put it in there. It wasn't in the original, and if you're trying to get, I could see you wanted some retail, right, in this PUD, got that, but as one of the other citizens had mentioned, we already have how many warehouses around here, right? We don't need more warehouses around here, okay? It's, they're not pretty, they're noisy, they're not conducive to most of residential areas. So you want to put houses here, we're going to have this warehouse right there with all these trucks going in and out. Doesn't make sense. And that doesn't bring them down. Another thing that same citizen had mentioned was, bringing technology type jobs, info type jobs, right? You bring in a higher pay scale there, right? Which could afford the new housing and things like that. People working in a warehouse are not going to be afforded $300,000 house, right? People working Possibly the truck drivers might, but they're not gonna live there, they're just delivering, you know? Same thing with all the stores, the retail stores. It's great to have them, maybe the owner of the stores can afford one of the houses, but those workers aren't going to. So it's really time to start thinking, looking at Elkton and saying, we want to improve Elkton and make it nicer. You know, you want to bring in people, you want to bring in professionals, you want to bring in people who are going to have that salary. You know, and I'm not saying kick out all the poor people, I don't mean that. Okay. I'm just saying you're trying to beautify the area, and so far, you know, that wording isn't happening, right? The other thing I did have an issue with, I'm a federal government support person for 29 and a half years. One of the things they teach you is if it looks unethical, if it smells unethical, stay away from it. In this case, the way that this process is being done, it smells unethical. Okay, you have an applicant whose main job is to, his whole thing in this is to profit, right? He's gonna make money over this. That's where he stands. He's not caring about Elkton, he's not caring about, you know, everybody else. He's caring about, he's gonna make a profit. So to have him and his lawyers and his land developers helping with the wording of the changing in the ordinance is the cat designing the canary cage, okay? He used words like, we gotta be flexible, you know, we want shipping. We want the things to be smaller, you know, instead of 200 feet for an apartment building and stuff, we're doing 50 feet for a house. I got that. You know, that's like my front yard. But a big apartment building, 50 feet from the road, that's underzoned. There is no way you're gonna beautify that, okay? So, you know, having the person who's going to get the most out of this, money-wise, helping to work and reword the ordinances, to me, is unethical. He's in this for profit, and he's rewording this for himself. HUDs have been out since 1968. They have been around. As the gentleman said, the lawyer said, they have looked at things within the state, okay? They have looked at other HUDs, they have looked at other ordinances for the wording. Then why, and you have your own engineering people that you pay for, you have your own lawyers you pay for, you have your own land developers that you pay for, why are we taking the old word from the developer? He should not be allowed inside the process. He is an applicant, and that's where it should stay, right there. He should not be inside the process. He should not be at these meetings until it's either approved or not. And then he can appeal. Okay, so that's mine.
Thank you so much for your comments. Well taken. Anyone else? This on this side? Come on down, sir.
Mr. Mayor, may I address?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
That's okay. Just to be clear to the mayor and commissioner, at no point did we take language from any applicant or anybody and just cookie cutter, just copy and paste, anything like that. This ordinance was created by the town of Elkton and used for something that was originated years ago. And then we went in and added specific language from our office after meeting with the departments with the town of Elkton. And you won't find an ordinance like this anywhere because it's different from the other ordinances that are out there. It's not an ordinance that we didn't just copy and paste from another municipality. And by all means, there was never, the developer did not write this ordinance. No one wrote this ordinance except for the town of Elkton. There were comments submitted like any other.
Thank you.
And let me rebut that. On Monday night, it was stated that many of those red lines were from the developer's land guide. It was stated Monday night. And I even said, because at the time they said, anytime someone mentioned Southfield, they would say, hey, we're not talking developer. And I said, wait a minute. You know, we're not talking project. Wait a minute. It was just stated that the developer of Southfield, or the potential developer of Southfield, had red lines into the document that we're reviewing right now. So you can tell all the public don't mention Southfield, but yet the Southfield developer and his people, his lawyers, are putting input. I got that you might not have taken it verbatim, but I was at those meetings. You have two different guys here putting input in. They should not even be allowed at those meetings. Sorry, but that is bias. And I'm not saying you're unethical, and I'm not saying even meant to be, or that even the thought even crossed your mind. but he knows what he's doing, and his lawyers know what they're doing, okay? They're doing what they need to do, there's a wording in there for what they want. He had said in the newspaper that he expects light industry, he was talking about a road for trucks, okay? So he wants that warehouse. He's gonna make money off that warehouse, he's gonna have big trucks going through. So he knows what he wants, and he's trying to sway you guys to what he wants, because, I don't know, the rumor is that he said, or it might have been in the paper, I don't know, I've been reading so much stuff. He doesn't get the light industry complex, the whole deal's off. So, I'm just
Thank you.
saying, that's why it appears,
I understand.
and I'm not saying it is unethical,
I
I'm saying
understand.
that they're gonna do their best to make their money.
I understand. I got it well noted.
I agree with that. All right. My name is Bill Horn, and I'm at 113 Mike Court, Elkton. I have one thing to ask you. Living in Walnut Hill, a development that now has at least 375 homes, and they're still building after 20 years. They still have empty lots in that development. We haven't finished it yet. Yes, the crash that we had back in '07 really took a hit on the development. The HOA there has not been strong at all. I mean, you might get 2 or 3 residents at a meeting, and I'm being one of them. I got so fed up after 15 years, I gave up. But I have another question. As seen in another small town that I lived in, one of the rules was that in the development that they were building, when you bought that house, you had to stay in that house and could not rent it for at least 10 years. And because Walnut Hill has so many homes that are rented, and I live in a block of 10 on my side, there's 10 on the other side, and I count them all the time. There's still 10 rented houses and 10 privately owned. And that is a shame. You know, and you talked about how we have gone more rented than owned. And I'm afraid that if you don't put in some kind of rules there, that the same thing's going to happen in Walnut Hill as your new development. And I don't know whether you might get a little settling down to the residents that live down there if you took that industrial area, crossed off industrial altogether, make it residential, put in a bowling alley, a movie theater, things for our teenagers to do. Because in Walnut Hill, we've had a lot of crime. The kids on Friday and Saturday nights don't know what to do with themselves. So they break into cars, they get into mischief, you know, and tear up our children's parks that we have. So, just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Okay.
Come on down, sir.
Finally, careful. I have some concerns about any new building that's going to be taking place. I live on 480 Bridgetown Road. I've lived in Elkton for all my life. I'm a truck driver. I work for GE down in Perryville. I have lots of questions and comments. I don't think we need any more apartment complexes. As far as that goes, we're pricing ourselves out of rent. I mean, the rent's out of control. And as much as I make, most of the new apartment complexes are income-based. I make more than that. So the only result that I have is is to buy a home. Either that or move down to Manor, where there's prostitution and high crime rate. And you have to own a gun if you go down there, and you're unable to buy a gun. Because the state of Maryland, you have to get a HQL. So, but the criminals get the guns. The other thing is, I don't see how this is gonna benefit Elkton at all. I think we need to think about how, what can bring people to Elkton. And I think the one thing that we had, the one thing that Elkton could have benefited from, got closed down, and that was the Little Chapel. You have Salem, Massachusetts, that bases their whole town. They turn a tragedy into something profitable. Brings people from all over the world, and it's over, they bring in, it's probably $1 billion industry, one of which dropped. We had a Little Chapel, people came from all over the place to get married. I closed down, that was a historical monument. And as far as the Main Street goes, I mean, there used to be thriving businesses there. Now there's nothing but lawyers. The tattoo studio is still there, which that's good. Pizza place and the bar and bail bondsmen. And I think we need to think about how we can revitalize Elkton. We have no public transportation. Anything, if you need to catch a bus, it shuts down around 9, 10 o'clock, maybe before then.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Long. Come on down.
Hi, Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer, can you sign in, please? While Jennifer is signing in, any comments that we've received by email or by letter specific to the articles, please make sure that we include those into the record.
So I guess first I have a question on the matter of procedure, because I have some questions, and then I have.
Well, tonight is your comment time to us.
Okay.
So we're taking your information and we're jotting it down and we're going to take it in for consideration.
Okay, great. So
So if we can answer the question, I'll refer over to Jean or the council.
Okay, one should be an easy one. And then I have general comments that I'll come back and make at the end.
Thank you.
When is the final language posted on the website?
What's that? August 30th was the draft language.
See what's on when
There is
They're
no
talking
final
about
language yet, but we're working on it now.
including all the amendments.
Correct.
As soon as those
I
are
was
put
at the meeting
together.
on Monday where a number of changes were made, so I thought you said that the language had been posted to the website, and I hadn't seen it, so I'm asking when it was posted.
The original language was posted on August 30th. We had the meeting on Monday, which was the original language with proposed changes. The recommendations were the recommendations I read from the commissioners tonight. The final language won't be posted until this board makes a decision on it.
Okay.
There's no final language yet.
Okay. So there's nothing for us to review that would have been available to the public based on.
After the planning commission meeting?
Correct.
No.
Mondays.
No.
Okay.
Should be updated on the webpage now, so people can make some changes.
Once the flood language is adopted, how can it be changed? What is the process?
Either the,
Through an amendment process, a complete petition. The mayor and commissioners to amend. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And what is the impact of the flood language on Cecil County at large? I mean, I don't mean, you know, if once a development, I'm looking truly at just adopting the PUD. What are the implications for the county more broadly? Meaning that could the language of the PUD be applied outside of the town limits and be adopted maybe by the county?
We're independent.
But the flood language is specific to Elkton, just as if I mentioned other municipalities, we look at it specific as to them.
Yeah. Okay. So if Cecil County wanted to adopt it more broadly, they could take it under consideration, but they have to write their own. Thank you, those were my questions. And then there's one comment right now for the discussion. One of the items that came up on Monday night was the desire to have light industrial defined, and I didn't hear that discussed this evening.
There was a request to define light industrial, and we are currently working on that language. We know what light industrial is not, but the final language for that hasn't been drafted yet.
Because that would be a pretty key element.
I think that'd be helpful
It was the
for
council
all.
that requested it, and I think it's smart to have it. It would be hard to consider this proposal fully without the language being finalized.
Thank you
And
so
I'll
much.
take my comments later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on down, sir.
Yeah, I know you don't want to talk with people that don't live in town. I don't live in town.
That's all right.
I have property in town, so I'm going to talk to you anyway.
Perfect.
Okay, the name's Gary Collins.
Good, Gary.
I've worked with Jean before, she knows me. Okay. I find she's very good at regulations. Baby jumps to them. I don't think, I agree with the gentleman as a truck driver that said we don't need a PUD. I totally agree with that. But I'm a realist. I realize you're going to push something through because you want the town to have bigger tax rates. I'm in favor of the houses. I'm not in favor of the industrial area, as most of these people aren't either. I don't think there's a need for it. When you talk about the PUD, you talk about the advantages. Is there a possibility in this document that we would put an amendment that the developer is responsible for the disadvantages, as in the people that are going to get their wells contaminated, as in if they put that marine in, dredging, who's going to pay for that? I think the developer should have to pay for that. I think we ought to put an amendment in there that he's responsible for any adverse consequences of his part. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Anyone else on it? Come on down.
Hi, everybody. All right, everyone, my name is Thomas McFadden. I live here in Elkton, Maryland, over in the Heights, and I think this is excellent. I think this is great. I think that if you look at the county, Elkton is absolutely situated to be the high-density growth area. I do have a couple concerns, and I know that there are valid concerns of the community as well. I can tell you, as a resident here, I've also been through this process when I was a homeowner out in Phoenix, Arizona, and a developer wanted to come in and put a high-rise luxury condominium right in our development. And it was an interesting process, much like what we're going through here today. I do think it's excellent that we're putting this language together, and I do think this is progress the town needs to move forward on. Having said that, a couple of things that I think about and that I have concerns about that I would like to see in terms of language in the, what do you call it here, 2019. And I don't know, because this isn't my wheelhouse, but does it make sense to include any verbiage about pass-through benefits? If developers are coming in and they're getting tax breaks to put in, a development and they're putting in commercial space, does it make sense, and would we be able to somehow put in kind of pass-through language so that local business owners would be able to benefit from that as well? Restaurateurs, some of the local owners of business, around here, they would also be able to take that benefit with them. You know, and I'm just curious, I don't know if that makes sense. To allow some of the local businesses, local entrepreneurs to also access that tax incentive. The other item would be allowing for higher elevations in condominiums. Is that something we would want to do? If we're going to encourage high-density growth, which I think Elkton is situated for, would we want to look at maybe having that density be vertical rather than horizontal? And is that something we might want to look at in terms of a planned use development area? It might make more sense to look at building upward rather than outward, right? And I do think maybe the 50 to 200 feet, I'm not understanding that very much, but maybe there's a middle ground in there. You know, 50 does sound pretty close. 250 also sounds a little far, right? Is there some middle ground that we might want to really look at and see what really does make sense? I really like the idea of breaking up the townhouses so you don't have that wall. I think that's excellent verbiage and excellent consideration in there. That was something we worried about when I lived in Phoenix and we had the high-rise luxury condominium going into our neighborhood. With that as well was the architectural elements. I definitely think we should have stone facades. That certainly makes sense. I would like to see more of that architectural development. With that as well, the facades just being on the public roads, what about the residents who live behind that? You know, if we're going to, again, allow certain benefits and we're going to encourage this planned use development, the property owners who live behind the buildings and behind the structures may be more open to some of this development if it doesn't look ugly from their front yards, from their backyards as well. So I would consider what exactly we define in terms of facades on public roads, and if that includes residential as well, or are we just talking about the main thoroughfares? Maybe looking at whether that needs clear definition. And I know this is a crazy one. This is one that we kind of fought for where I was out there in Phoenix, but we did find that the developers were open to it, and that was, is there any way that in that idea of providing notice to the public, I notice your verbiage says contiguous, which is just the landowners, and I don't know if that is just in reference to a certified letter. What kind of notification are we providing to people who are not contiguous and who might be across the street or within 1,000 feet? Or do we have notification going to them? Doesn't necessarily have to be certified letter, right? But is there a process to those people that are landowners around that space? And this is kind of, I know I'm probably asking for too much, the developer would laugh me out of this room, but is there a way to have a public input hearing about those architectural elements from the people who live in the community? That was something we were able to be a part of the process of in Phoenix. They did allow us to make recommendations and comments. It was a public forum hearing, and you know, there were some things they certainly weren't going to do, but there were things that they did, you know, amend and made to make it look more like the architectural style of our neighborhood. So that was really interesting to be a part of that process. And it felt more like the community had buy-in to the development. I think that's all I got. Thank you.
You said you live in the Heights now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side? All right, let's swing over to the other side. Oh, come on, Mr. Thompson, we'll get you way in the back.
Okay.
Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thompson, Elkton Boulevard. Yeah, after our 4-hour meeting the other evening, I wanted to bring the attention to the mayor and the commissioners and the other folks who may not have been here. Some of these changes that were made tonight were not recommended by the planning commission. They were recommended by, apparently by the town's attorney without our knowledge or discussion. So wanted to bring that to your attention. The main focus this was on the.
Can you tell me which ones?
I sure can.
Thank you.
The heavy manufacturing, I don't know if Gene had mentioned that, that was deleted from the PUD.
That's
I'm
correct.
sorry, you're correct, yeah, I thought I said that, but it was
I believe that
deleted,
was
yes.
stated.
It was
Okay,
deleted.
and then the storage and parking was not to be permitted at all in the PUD, is what our commission recommended. So I don't know where the attorney came up with
There was a
this.
request to add it in under large. So after it was recommended to be removed, there was a request to
But
add
it never was added in there.
10.210. That's a request. It isn't in there now. It was a request to be
Okay,
added by
so
MRI.
let me understand how this works. Our planning commission recommended that there be no storage and parking, and that was discussed here along with the attorney. So, and then all of a sudden, now we've got storage and parking.
There was a request for it,
Well, you put in the request.
MRA.
Okay, why wasn't it brought to the planning commission?
This was after the planning commission meeting. This was as a result of the planning commission meeting. There was a request to add that in. And that's,
Okay.
that was presented to this board.
But the representative from MRA was at the planning commission,
Yes.
along with the public. So, as far as I'm concerned, that shouldn't even be considered this evening.
Hear you loud and clear.
If I may
Yep.
make that point. And that was the only other thing, other than the definition of light manufacturer was, and I know Chief worked on it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Come on down, Mr. Connolly.
Good evening. I'm John Connolly. I live on 66 Sarah Drive, just outside the town itself. A couple things, I guess, have been answered in a way, and Mr. Thompson just brought up some things that I guess I was at the meeting on Monday night, and some things that Ms. Minner said were new to me, and Mr. Thompson identified those, because when we were talking about Article 10, municipal uses table, we had talked about striking heavy manufacturing. We left in light manufacturing, looking for a definition. Now the term light industrial came up, and that was something apparently that had happened after the fact.
I think I was using the term light manufacturing, light industrial interchangeably. It's however it's written in the ordinance.
Light manufacturing.
It's light manufacturing, yeah, light manufacturing, that's correct.
So that's the term?
I was using
That's
those
the
terms
term.
interchangeably.
Okay. So with respect to some of the changes that were brought in after the fact, after the meeting, Mr. Thompson was talking about, for example, allowing storage in light industrial within facilities in large PUD by special exception, warehousing and distribution by special exception in large PUD. Because that was brought in after the fact, do those new modifications, do they go back to the planning commission? How does that, do we now comment on that? Because I don't believe they should be included.
No, I understand what you're, over the next, once we accept this for introduction tonight, over the next 20-plus days, there could be a lot of changes to this, and they wouldn't go back to the planning commission, but you'll have your opportunity again on October 2nd to read these, and we'll make sure that we get everything on the website so everyone can be well prepared during those next 20 days to be able to present to us, because we can accept it as amended on that night.
So will the amended articles be posted prior to October 2nd?
Absolutely, we're gonna make sure everything that we're discussing tonight is gonna be, and it'll be updated daily if it has to be.
Okay.
I can promise you that.
Because those two things that I am not in favor of. The way it was left was that within the area for manufacturing, we kept the term light manufacturing to be defined. And as Mr. Thompson said, within area 10, storage and parking, there were no marks at all for the large PUD, and it was to remain that way. And I was in favor of that.
What exactly does the parking mean?
Well, there were subcategories within that area that talked about storage of goods not related to sale or use of those goods on the same lot where they were stored, all storage within completely enclosed structures, truck terminals, many warehouses were put in there. Those are just examples of some of the subcategories. And for me, any reference to warehousing, distribution, industrial facilities, those types of things, I was not in favor of. And so when I was going through from this use table, I was specifically looking for those types of things.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, we'll absolutely consider.
And what the request was under storage and parking, under 10.2 is the heading of storage of goods not related to the sale or use of those goods on the same lot where they are stored, comma, warehousing. The specific request was to allow 10.210, which is all storage within completely enclosed structures. So storage within a completely enclosed structure is the request.
And who made the request?
MRA.
Let's see what else I have. As mentioned earlier by our first speaker and others, we did have information provided to us that the developer did have input to the zoning language process. I understand that part. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. But what I really don't feel good about is, my personal belief is that any group that has a monetary stake in a potential upcoming project should recuse themselves from having input and participation. No matter how well intentioned it may be, I don't think it's without bias. And to have that, she used, I think, the canary and cat. I like to turn pots and pans. I don't think it's appropriate. Now, after our meeting on Monday night, I revised my comments. I sent those to Ms. Minner. I asked her to forward those on. You folks may have received those written comments already. If not, that's okay. I won't go into those in detail, but with respect to Article 2, the definitions, I just would like to make one comment. Yes, I live outside of town limits, but the concerns of all residents surrounding proposed PUD need to be objectively considered. The last sentence in the definition of a large PUD states that non-residential uses shall primarily serve the residents of the region surrounding the large PUD. And the region will vary depending on what PUD is, where it's located. But in the case of a potentially large upcoming PUD, this region will include and impact a significant number of county residents, all the way to the southern end of the county, roads, schools, various things. So what I would like to remind the town is, even though this PUD may be within town limits, it's really not a town issue anymore. And the residents of the county, their concerns need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, the gentleman that had a question about notices. I think if you look at Article 9, Section 1, subsection 2B, talks about notice to adjacent property owners. So that would be someone like myself whose property is adjacent to any proposed PUD that may come down in place in the future. So there, by that process and by that subsection, then we would be getting notification of any upcoming hearings. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed.
No, I said that I was gonna come back with my.
Oh, I'm sorry, come on back down.
Well, no, she wanted public comment.
Oh,
No, we're
These
talking,
comments
Public
to
comments
this.
are-
we're not
Yes.
ending the meeting.
Comments to this discussion.
Okay, come on in, come on back. Yes, I apologize.
Sorry.
I apologize. I
Sorry,
should have probably had you keep talking.
Procedure, right, I probably should have just kept going.
But I'm gonna give you an opportunity after we close the public hearing to talk about, if you want to talk about the project, you certainly can. Good, bad, or indifferent, we're here for you to certainly listen. But in regards to the articles, go ahead.
Thank you. It's specific to the PUD, more general in nature than specific to the articles themselves.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just share my concerns with you about the PUD in general. And I did have the privilege the other night of participating in the planning session. And I asked a simple question, which is, why are we doing this? Because 48 hours ago or so, I didn't even know what a PUD was. So I've done a lot of education in the last couple of days to try to understand better. And just like yourselves, probably putting in some long nights, and I know a number of the concerned citizens who are here before you tonight have been working very hard to make sure they understand as best they can and contribute as best they can to the process. This is a legacy project that is being considered. To change the zoning ordinances through a PUD is something that will last for a very, very long period of time. And I guess my point of mentioning that is that we've got to give adequate consideration to what's being proposed in this PUD. And I know that you mentioned that the language was originally drafted in, I think you said 2000, and readdressed in 2010, and it resurfaced in 2013. But, you know, the real push has been in the last couple of months because there's some very real implications for having this language now in place, this regulation now in place. So my first concern is that there's inadequate time for public review and consideration. The PUD is recommending unprecedented proposals for development that will have serious impacts on the quality of life of the residents in the town of Elkton and the region of Cecil County. Until very recently, no one really cared about PUD language until a developer wanted to create one. Now the town, with support from the county, is pushing this through in like record time, even though it had sat idle for years. So I understand now that we have a couple more weeks to consider the language that was reviewed on Monday, and that you'll take that to vote on October 2nd. So thank you for understanding that the public probably needs a little more time to digest this, especially with the revised language not even available to us yet.
Understand.
My second concern is the infrastructure to support both large and small PUDs. Others have expressed these concerns numerous times, so I won't belabor the point. The current state of our infrastructure is already inadequate, and in several cases, large-scale growth would really push those over the limit, to the tipping point. This includes, as many folks have said, the roads, the bridges, the schools, the water, the wastewater treatment, stormwater management, noise, light, and air pollution. The impact of industrial growth on the Chesapeake Bay watershed will have damaging impacts on the rivers, the marine industry, and marina businesses. The water treatment plant released untreated sewage a few times, and the Cecil County Health Department had to provide notice to the public because of those releases potentially going downstream. And citizens were advised to avoid the water downstream. So these are very real issues today before we even put this development on the planning boards. So for reasons related to already stressed infrastructure that can't adequately support the large-scale growth proposed in any PUD, I ask you to reconsider the proposal. My third area of concern relates to the financial impacts that this proposal would have on the residents. The infrastructure concerns mentioned previously will need to be addressed and significantly improved. With the tax breaks being provided through the opportunity zones and the enterprise zones, the burden of funding those improvements to infrastructure is going to fall on the existing taxpayers, the existing residents of the community. And I can only imagine that that's going to mean to the individual taxpayers sitting here tonight. There's no financial plan that I'm aware of, and if there is, point me to it, that could adequately support the proposed unprecedented growth in any PUD proposal. So again, I ask you, why are we doing this? Because we really need to move away from traditional zoning ordinances. My fourth concern is that this proposal does not encourage the use of already designated alternatives for light or heavy industry already available in the county. This results in sub-optimized plan. There's already industrial areas designated in the town and the county that could be used before adopting PUD regulations. So I would ask, again, shouldn't we think about using those lands differently first? Finally, as I spent some time looking at the town of Elkton, there isn't much land left in the town proper that would require the adoption of a large PUD, as best I can tell. I previously asked the planning board, why we're doing this. There's no other vacant property the size of the area currently slated for Southfields. So I can only conclude that while the adoption of a PUD is for purposes of all future proposed developments, I'm not sure there's sufficient land anywhere that would adequately support the land proposal for Southfields and the regulation that's being put in place for that purpose. The county certainly has other open land, and I'd like to trust our elected officials wouldn't annex additional land to the town so that it would be developed under this proposed PUD without county residents having adequate input to that process. The people who benefit from the PUD are the landowners and the developers. I ask that you really consider the severity, the impact of this PUD decision. I'm not talking about the Southfields project. I'm really focused on the PUD language itself. And if despite all the concerns that were expressed tonight and all the meetings leading up to tonight, you still feel it necessary to put this PUD in place, then I respectfully request that you at least exclude all minimum, at a minimum, all light, heavy, industrial and manufacturing. In closing, I just ask you to have the courage to act independently of the pressures of the county and the state and vote based on where residents of the town and the constituents of the region of Cecil County would ask you to do. Thank you very much for your time, your patience, and your consideration.
Thank you so much. This public hearing is closed. You'll have a chance to talk on your public, but the public hearing is closed. It is 8:23. Okay, board, do we have a motion to accept for introduction only, ordinance 5-2019? We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on ordinance 5-2019 for introduction only?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion to accept ordinance 6-2019 for introduction only?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, just once again, the procedure. Gene, we're going to make sure that all this information gets on the website as it's updated. I would like to request I'd like to have a little bit better understanding of that storage and parking also. I think the board would like to have that also. And then with that, as we move down this process, we're going to give everyone an opportunity again prior to the vote on October 2nd. With that, Lou, do you have anything to report this evening?
The only thing I want to report is that the contractor has almost completed the footers for the neighborhood community center, and they have about 30 piers of floor. Once that's done, the mason comes in and puts on the masonry work of the course of blocks around there, some excavation work, and then they'll start erecting the steel. Now, that should happen at the beginning of November, so we'll actually see this building starting to go up from the ground up. That's a good thing, since we have over $3.5 million left in that project, so it's moving along
Very good.
right now.
All right, very good. I just wanted to mention to everyone, while we got a great crowd in here, make sure you come down to downtown Elkton this weekend. It is Fall Fest weekend. It'll be a lot of action. And I wanted to remind everyone here that on October 4th is the Elkton Alumni event that's going to happen in downtown Elkton. So if there's any alumni here, please make sure that you make it down for the 4th. Gene, you have anything?
I know.
Charles? Earl?
I went by and visited the site today, and I was just going to ask 2 questions. You just gave me the details for it, so it's moving along pretty well. So, glad to see that.
Very good. Rob?
I would just like to thank everybody for coming out and expressing your concerns and your ideas. I'm still fairly new to the board, and I'll tell you, I got on this board because I am like-minded and like-hearted with the rest of the administration, in that we really want to do what's best for the town and our constituents. And we appreciate you coming out and talking to us like this. It means a lot and helps us to make decisions. Other than that, like Rob said, Fall Fest is this weekend, and the Elkton Alliance has told me that they had more vendors than they had spots. So it should be a very large and successful Fall Fest. You should all come out and enjoy it. Thank you.
Okay, now this is the time of the meeting. We're going to open up the floor for public comments, and anything for the good of Elkton. I'll give everyone 5 minutes to blast at us in any way you want. Mr. Gibling, come on down.
Ed Goodwin, 14 Wall Street. I did have one simple comment of the people who came up with opposing Southfield. I didn't hear any personal reason why they objected. You know, fear of losing money one way or another. And maybe I missed it. I haven't heard anything tonight. Okay. 5 minutes.
You got 5.
Okay. A number of ideas were given to the Elkton Alliance, and I thought that Jessica Price would give me a call on this past week to have me come explain in greater detail, offer my services in any way I can. That hasn't happened, so I'm going to give her a call tomorrow.
That'd be fantastic. And just to let you know that I think on October 8th would be their first meeting. Is that correct, or is it October 1st? We're going to find out exactly when their meeting is, and then we'll make sure that you get invited to go to their meeting.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wall.
Because you have some great ideas, Mr. Gill.
Okay, now, I just want to quickly run through the previous ideas. August 7th, proposed a mini park on the Big Elk between the gazebo and the Bridge Street Bridge. And not a pocket park, 2 park benches and a small brick wall around it, so people can just sit there and relax. You know, the serenity of the Elk flowing by. Okay? Annual barbecue bash. Bel-Air has a big one. Lexington, North Carolina has a bigger one with 160,000 people a year attending.
Thank you.
I also propose a newsletter, a periodic newsletter, and I don't know what that period is, explaining what events are going on to people, and they can pick it up from little stands like the Cecil Gardening used to have, you know, at Union Hospital, 7-Eleven, and things like that. Fire Company Carnival. Carroll County has 11 fire company carnivals during the summer. Each town And these are small little towns. And my three sons used to drag me there all the time. Okay. Next one is August 14th, a raffle with lunch with the mayor as a fundraiser. And
Did you say guns with the mayor? I might get shot.
and a dunk tank alternative for $250. There's a little dunk tank, I think these out.
Thank you.
Where a bucket of water is dumped on the lucky or unlucky person sitting underneath it. And to me, it looked like all we need was a piece of chicken wire over the front for safety reasons.
Thank you.
Next one was September 4th, traveling circus. And I picked up one, Zervini Family Circus. And I have a YouTube video. Anyone who watched that YouTube video would say, yes, Elkton needs a carnival. Also, as a fundraiser, I proposed a cow plop bingo, but there's also civilized ways to do that. Amazon sells freeze-dried cow plops for I don't know what reason. And you can put it on a robotic vacuum cleaner to go around and see where it stops.
Still, that's your best one yet.
Community garden. It's funny, with a fenced-in area, and rent-out area, people grow fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of different towns throughout Maryland that have community gardens already. Has an appointed forest for Halloween, and I think that the path from Meadow Park going over to the baseball fields, I think it's the scariest part in Elkton, and it would be great, to get some volunteer witches, ghosts, and goblins, to run it.
Well, thank you. And you went over those with us last meeting, so we'll make sure that you go over all that with Jessica.
Okay. Yes. September 18th, proposed in Elkton.
That's today. Tomorrow.
Today's the 18th.
Today? Oh, wow.
A day in the future.
Yeah, the day is the 18th. Yeah. So this is your new ideas. Well, listen, we'll take these into considerations. Now, let me read them for you.
Try together with the Elkton Alliance.
Perfect. And I love the idea. So Mr. Giblin put on here, Olympics Day, junior bicycle races, a drone park, bocce ball courts, the Grumpy Ice Water Plunge, Twin Days Festival, and Crawfish Festival. So these are all fantastic ideas, but you're bringing them to the wrong people all the time.
I'm getting together back here for portable bocce courts.
Yes.
For $500 or something. And
We got Gene working on
Wednesday
the board.
festival, what did I do that? I think they must have handed that out already. Twins Day, there's Twinsburg, Ohio, has a great thing, and there's a lot of twins out there. I have twins, and I think just have a small one with a little contest and everything else. I think that would be a great idea. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
So these were all given to the Elkton Alliance, and because Mayor Lowell, as you and the town commissioners mentioned, you don't have the manpower to go all into all these ideas. So I'm gonna follow up with the Elkton Alliance, what can be done?
Fantastic.
Pick one. I like the dome tank alternative.
I love them. And you could also get with our Parks and Rec Board and discuss it also. One thing I did forget to mention, that on Saturday, the Elk Landing Foundation at Marina Park posted a venue about kayaking with history. There was 29 kayaks that actually took off from Marina Park over the weekend, which was absolutely wonderful. Anyone else this evening have anything to say? Come on back down. Now's your time.
Okay.
Now's your time. You got 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm a little lenient on my 5 minutes, as you can see.
Okay, when I get nervous, as you can tell, I got it.
Don't get
So
nervous.
I apologize, I got nervous. I'm great.
I know you're not mad at me, and you're passionate
I'm
about
passionate,
it. We
I'm Italian,
understand
So,
that.
you know, that just comes with.
We
my-
absolutely understand it.
So, Southfields. Couple of things right off the bat. A, I don't think that's the place for it. Okay, I think that Elkton needs to be spruced up. Okay, it really needs to be spruced up. I've seen towns that were really crappy and they redid themselves, they revitalized themselves, they are now like thriving towns. Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. My niece moved there, it's all young professionals now, but the downtown is what did it. It wasn't putting in a light industry thing of shipping, it was an old steel thing, you know, it went downhill the town, they revitalized it. There are fantastic restaurants, you know, brewery restaurants, all along there. The apartments above these are going for like $4,000 a pop.
Wow.
Okay? Because they revitalized themselves. Yes, they have more transportation too. You know, when we were moving down here, that's one of the things we were supposedly promised was that there was going to be a train hitting here at like by Elkton Station. Never happened. Been here almost 7 years, hasn't happened, haven't even heard anything about that. So, as the one man had said about public transportation, that's a big thing if you want people to live here and maybe work somewhere else, you know, instead of just living where they work. This is a nice area. I purposely chose to live here. Most of my, you know, comrades moved down to Hartford County to be closer to work. I like this area. The problem is you're going to put this thing, the Southfield's mess, okay? And I'm not going to like that area. So I'll tell you something. Right now you're looking at there and it's pretty nice. You know, there's a farm there, it's a pretty area, okay? The road is small, tough for transportation, you know, people going by, that's okay. Keep it that way. Now you're gonna put up, let's say, houses. Houses are not pretty. I don't care how great the house looks, they're not prettier than the land, okay? Now, putting up some nice houses can maybe do something. You turn around and put up now apartment buildings, light industry. I mean, it's really ruining that area. Okay, as far as aesthetically. Who wants to live there looking at that? Right, put all new houses? No, we'll look at all that. Let me back up one more time. The housing that's being proposed is approximately 4,000 new people. Let's say 2 parents, 2 kids, average, right? One might be 1 parent, 5 kids, one might be, you know, 2 parents, 0 kids, but average, 2 parents, 2 kids. Bow Manor, which is why, one of the reasons I moved, where I moved, in Cecil County, is a great school. Has issues, I know, with money, things were taken away. I know down here, the county, you know, the schools are paid for out of the county thing, which is a little bit different than what I was used to. Bow Manor is very nice. Bow Manor is 104% capacity right now. They have trailers and stuff out there, okay? You put these people there, another 2,000 kids, where are these kids gonna go? Right now, they're a feeder into Bow Manor. So you're ruining Bow Manor, totally. Because those kids in Bow Manor, it's a very rural school, unlike Elkton High, which is not a rural school. But the kids that go to Bow Manor are not used to, you know, being all clumped in together. It's a different type of atmosphere and a different type of children that you're going to have go there. Okay, so now you're gonna overcrowd that school, and I've been through this before. Taxes will go up. You're inside of Elkton, it's great for in town of Elkton to say, oh yay, we're gonna get these taxes and these taxes. But the people in the county are gonna be taxed when you put those kids out there. Because they're gonna have to do more buses, more police to patrol the roads. The roads are gonna have to be widened because there's no way you're gonna sustain all these people and all this housing without widening these roads. The school itself is gonna have additions done. You're gonna have to start putting additions on your elementary schools. And of course, your high school, and Bow Manor is a junior, senior high, which is overly crowded, so you're gonna have to put more on. I've been through all this. What happens is the kids, until they get around to when it gets really bad enough, and you made enough tax money in the county to then put the additions on, before that, the kids going to that school get the crap. Okay, they're now in overcrowded classrooms, trailers, okay? I mean, if worse came to worse and you really do put Southfields in, at least put an amendment that those kids have to go to Elkton High, where they're not at full capacity. And I think at least, to me, that's the least you can do. But again, I don't think that Southfields is, when you're sitting there looking at Elk Mall, most of it's empty. Looks terrible, great hangout for beggars, right? You can't go to a store without being accosted, okay? Over in Renders, you have the strip mall there. The whole thing is empty except for like the tavern, that's the bar that's at the end. You know, you go over downtown and you have the little parks. Who's hanging out in these parks? You know, it's not the best of people. Downtown Elkton. Yeah, on Monday night, I went the wrong way out the door, right? And I'm like, oh crap, the car's the other way. And I'm walking between two buildings going, please, Lord, just get me to my car, let me find my car, because I know a lot of people that are hanging out in Elkton, and they're not the kind of people I want to walk in the night with, okay? So I think that by cleaning up, the first thing should be is the downtown. You have such a history here. I mean, I've read where Andrew Jackson came through here on his way to be president. Okay, I mean, Washington has been here, Lafayette has been here. Publix has had George Washington days, have things like this. Make the downtown nice. Make Big Elk Mall presentable. Do something there. Take a small pud, and stick it in there. You know, just because it's paved now, you can rip that up and make it nicer. Instead of taking something that's beautiful and making it ugly, take some of the things that are ugly and make them beautiful.
Thank you.
Because you have Southfield, you still got all that ugly out there. You know, people aren't going to move here just for Southfield when the rest of the town is ugly.
Thank you. And I would ask you, I would like to invite you to come down this weekend for Fall Fest.
I will.
And hopefully you'll get a different feeling. Thank you. Anyone else on this side? Come on down, sir. We didn't get your name the first time. This is your first time.
Okay, I'll make sure you get it.
All right, fantastic.
All right. I'll even write it really big.
Thank you.
That guy on the Declaration of Independence.
There you go.
Peter Klein, 1811 Town Point Road. Town Point is the confluence of the great Bohemia and the mighty Elk.
Know exactly where you're at.
Exactly where it is, okay. I was trying to think of something new to say tonight. I'm generally opposed to the concept of the PUD language, and so far specifically opposed to the proposal that Stonewall Capital is brought before us, right? Water quality is a big part of why I moved down here originally 20 years ago, which means I'm still pretty new, right, to the area, but here I am. And so that's my primary personal concern. I've been trying to figure out what it is that's bothering me about how this is all taking place so far. And I've heard the history, and you know, somebody once said the days are long and the years are short, and so I recognize that taking something from 20 years ago and dusting it off 3 months ago and working that is, you know, I don't know, is that a long time or a short time? I can't quite figure it out, but to me it seems really fast since the time I found out about this until tonight.
I understand.
A friend once who worked for NASA who promised me that with enough thrust anything could fly, right? So what's really bothering me is, where is the thrust coming from? Mr. Jackson, Stonewall Capital, his motives are completely transparent. He's got an opportunity to build the last project of his career that he can retire on, and he's got this whole triple tax-free thing going with the enterprise zones and the whatever tax-free zones at the county, at the state, at the town levels, and who knows what else. But still, where's the rest of the thrust coming from? Why are we in such a rush to pass all this? And so what we don't know is who are the other people with motive, with financial interest in seeing all of this succeed. So I would suggest that between now and the vote, 2 weeks hence, it would be a perfect time for everybody involved in the passage of this, including the elected representatives and the staff members and attorneys, to publish a statement of financial interests that they have and their families have in not only the lands within Elkton that this PUD structure could be dropped on top of, but there's plenty of land to the north that could be annexed, there's plenty of land to the south that could be annexed, and then the PUD structure can get dropped right on top of that. And there are lots of people who stand to benefit if you're playing the long game, not now, not 5 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, and statements saying, I and my family have no interest whatsoever in passage of this and the success of these projects, or we do, right? Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. The great late Ronald Reagan, president, said, trust but verify. Please tell us. That's all. There's nothing wrong with having an interest in being invested in your own town and the areas around it. We just don't know.
No, you have a very good point.
Okay? That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Come on back down, sir.
Back again, yes.
Mr.
Had a
Collins.
meeting the other day, and Roy Jackson said that you plan on putting 2 more lights on 213, one at Frenchtown and one where the access would be from the small PUD coming out on 213. Right now, in this, well, summer's over, but in summertime, from Baker's Restaurant, clear past Frenchtown where I live, traffic backs up. You put 2 more lights in there, you better put a policeman up at Route 40 to get traffic through 40. It's going to back clear up into Route 40. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know how else you're going to do it because we don't have enough roads for this. You really have to think, because you're going to have traffic study, I understand that. As far as the PUD, I understand we need to get strict language for PUD. I'm not in favor of this one, but we still have to get the language. I understand that. The other thing, in this Southfields zone, they have A and B, which is down by the water. And they're proposing high density in critical area. Now, I understand you let Kensington Court go in spite of arguments. And Kensington Court turned out pretty well, I have to admit. But that area down there, A and B, you can't put high density building down in that critical area. Right now, the Federal Clean Water Act, Section 404, has to deal with the dredging. And they're going to have to deal with dredging down there because it's so thin all the time. Now, who's going to pay? The citizens of Elkton's going to pay to have it redredged if we let them do this? I don't think so. Is Elkton going to pay to have it dredged? No. We taxpayers got to pay for it. So I think that has to really be considered in this plan. A and B really shouldn't be there. I don't think we need the industrial either, but that's beside the point. The other thing is the water quality. I have a dock down there right by A and B. I don't use that dock. The water treatment plant, someone here's one meeting said it's only 40% capacity right now. I can't really leave my children go in that water because on Thursday they backwash. There's foam by my dock. And so you know what that foam is, you wouldn't go in that water either. You're talking about putting more development down at A&B. I'm sorry, I'm really against it.
Now, you're saying A and B, help me.
A and B is down by the waterfront, they talk about the possible marina, talk about some
gotcha.
housing down there.
Understand.
And that is totally unacceptable.
Historical Frenchtown.
Got it.
Yep.
Come on down, Mr. Conley. I would like to make a comment though beforehand. Just to, not to make light of anything, but I grew up on Elk Forest Road. I grew up right at the intersection of Elk Forest and 213 at the trailer park. My aunt and uncle owned Paul's Trailer Park. And I grew up there and I graduated from Bohemian Manor in 1979. So you can guess my age of 58 right now. But it was exciting to get the McDonald's in Elkton. There was no Big Elk Mall. There was nothing. But being from Bohemian Manor, we would hitchhike to Elkton, my good friend Walter Price and I. It happened all the time. We wouldn't see a car. So I just wanted to stress to everyone, in 1977, when we were hitchhiking to Elkton, there was no cars. We couldn't get a ride, and that was about 3.5 miles, and being that young, we could walk all the way to McDonald's and then hope that we'd catch a ride back down by meeting someone there. But change does happen, and it's good, bad, or indifferent. I just wanted to let you know how things has changed from 3 cars to where we're talking about how many lights. My mother worked at a truck stop on Route 40 at Bear, Delaware. And going from Route 7, the intersection of Route 7 and Route 40, I still remember there was one red light for her to go down to Route 40 all the way to Bear, Delaware. Now when you go to Bear, Delaware, as we all know, you can't make it in 20 minutes. It's a 40, 50-minute drive. So and I don't mean this, I'm just relating to, I certainly recognize a lot of the traffic issues. A lot. I'm sorry, sir. Okay.
Southfields. Yesterday I spent the morning and evening out at the county building. In the morning we had what I thought was a good presentation by Mr. Jackson. We got a little more information than when he presented here on the 28th of August. Still a lot that's really unknown at this point. And it's no secret for me that with respect to Southfields, the concept as it currently exists, it doesn't work for me, particularly the industrial area. To me, a PUD, any PUD, it shouldn't just be what the developer offers. It should be based on that as a starting point, but then it's shaped by the regulations that we're working on. It's shaped by input from boards like yourself. It's shaped by input from citizens. So that when all is said and done, we actually have something that we can be proud of, both the town and the county. To me, that's what a PUD is. And a lot of our comments are passionate, they're objective, they have some data behind them, but we do that because we care. Okay? As a result of the meetings the other day and other background information that I've gathered and analysis that I've done, I could talk about the transportation. I've done my own impact study with that. But we don't have that much information right now. What we do have, we get from the Cecil WIG. And based on what's there, I keep seeing references, and it was reinforced tonight, warehousing and distribution. Warehousing and distribution. You'll see a reference in some comments that I'll send you. I'm just going to forward, in the interest of brevity, the comments that I sent to all the county council members. I think you'll find them interesting with respect to Southfields. The objective, there's data points behind it. It presents a broad range of topics. It does focus on the industrial aspects, but I think we actually have that covered here within the town and the county. But with respect to Southfields itself and the idea of bringing in warehousing and distribution jobs, I note within my comments, if you go back and look at the county's comprehensive plan that was studied in 2007, that says we need to move away from that. My recommendation is that any PUD that comes down the line, Southfields or anything else, if the developer is coming in and recommending those types of occupations, send them back to the drawing board. Back in 2007, the county study, the short title was called the Growth Study. It recognizes that we needed to bring in more professional series jobs. Bring in the scientists, the engineers, the attorneys, the physicians. Bring in those higher paying jobs with better benefits. You will have more money put back into the county, into the towns. That will better our standard of living. I mean, we're known as a blue-collar bedroom community. We need to change that and to keep perpetuating the idea of warehousing and distribution jobs. You typically see the $15 an hour fulfillment center, Amazon-type jobs. That doesn't benefit us. We deserve better. We being the collective county, all the towns, all the county. Please consider that when these types of PUDs come through. And yes, Southfields is the first one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have anything to say this evening? Come on down, ma'am. Maybe the last one tonight.
grammar.
All right, Linda. I think we know Linda.
Uh-huh.
You enjoying your retirement?
I am indeed. I just felt as though I needed to go on the record, because when I read Mayor Alt's vision for that same area for a world-class sports facility, I was so impressed with that vision. I thought it would be great for Elkton, and it'd make Elkton a destination, and bring us up in the world, and just happened to have two grandsons that play hockey, and I know how far they have to travel to get to any rinks, and I thought, wow, that would really make Elkton be on the map. And then, when the switch came, and, you know, in that same beautiful property between Frenchtown Road and Route 40, now we're putting industrial site. It was a big disappointment to me to have that switch. And if it was a housing project that would go towards supporting having a world-class sports facility, then it would be worth it. I wouldn't mind the traffic. It'd be worth it for our kids, it'd be worth it for our families, it'd be worth it for our community. But to have all that land sort of go to housing and an industrial site, it was a big disappointment. And, you know, I can see, I'm glad for the move from heavy industrial, heavy manufacturing to light. That was an improvement, but still, I really love the idea of the world-class sports facility and athletic fields. And isn't that what we want for our town, to really make it a positive thing for our community and our families? And that's, you know, I love Cecil County, I love Elkton. I really want to see us improve our quality of life here in our own community. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap that up, but I would like to say one thing about it. The last 5 years, I have tried my best to bring, my vision was to bring the world-class, the largest indoor-outdoor recreation facility in North America. I spent a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to achieve that. As I said before, I've met with Under Armour, I met with the Cordish Group, I met with, it's unlimited the amount of folks that I've met with over the last 5 years trying to make that happen. And I will stress to you, the reason that I wanted to try to come up with a project there is and one of the current zoning of Southfields is R3, high density residential. And there's been some discussion hearing there about there was a plan that was brought in years ago that would put 2,500 houses in that whole region. But by zoning, that could have been 10 houses per acre. So it truly could have been 6,500 houses. So my motivation, when you asked what my motivation was, is I felt that the town was not ready for a development that was going to look like 6,500 townhouses. We used the words 2,500 many times in the paper, but it could have been 6,500 townhouses. And that just was not the vision that I wanted to have for our town. I still would love to see this sports complex come to fruition, but after, it's very disappointing to me that we can't make it happen. And we've been able, hopefully, to negotiate a piece of it, and hopefully we'll be able to negotiate something that will be acceptable to everyone in this room. But once again, that's a concept that we're seeing by Stonewall Capital with the property owners. There's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be some changes, good and bad, in this room that we'll see over the next couple of weeks. But I can promise you that everyone on this board does take it seriously. And I think at one meeting I kind of made a comment that you weren't important to us, and by any means that I apologize to everyone in this room for that comment. because that isn't what I really meant. Everyone's voice is important. It is important here, and I hear you loud and clear. These PUDs have to be right for the region, not necessarily just the town of Elkton, because it does touch. I also wanted to make sure everyone is aware that this is in the town of Elkton currently. It's not being annexed in. It was annexed in 2003. So we're strongly looking at this, and I know hopefully I'm speaking for the board. If you have any comments you want to say, if not, oh, go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, it's going to bug me if I don't say it. First of all, I respect everybody's comments that they've given today. I have to say that I've been here 62 years of my life here in this little town here. Lived on High Street most of my life. My family still lives there. My birthday was just yesterday, 86. And we have probably one of the largest families here in Elkton. We tend to hear people talk about coming to Elkton, how bad it is. And I've been here 62 years now. I heard what you said about coming out the back door the wrong way, hoping to get to the car. With our police officers here, I think we have one of the safest towns in the county. And it bothers me when I hear them talk about how bad Elkton is with me living here all these years. But my family, like I said, born and raised here. We tend to say, what do we have here for the youth, for the elderly people? Everyone always says nothing. And then we have an opportunity to get something, and then everybody wants to go against it. That's their opinion. I'm not down on that. We have to drive so far to hockey and soccer just to take our kids to be involved with something. 2-3 hours worrying about the long drive back home. Then when the spot comes where we potentially get a chance to do something, not me, not you, but someone wants to move it to somebody else's property that doesn't have any investment in it. What I'm saying here is an opportunity for something to be brought or sold for a purpose. We tend to have a disagreement against it, but yet we don't have no value, no money involved with it. The board here is not trying to push nothing through, not trying to rush nothing. Here's an opportunity for a buyer to buy a piece of property that's offered. The concept comes by, we jump on it because we want to enhance the town of Elkton. Try to take this as easy as I can, but it's hard to see the town say no to something and then, for like the casino, oh, let them go up that way. Now, why did the town of Elkton approve it so they can come down here? We let that go. Why don't we accept this from this buyer, the town of Elkton won't? We always get to say that we don't want to do nothing, we don't want to grow because we don't want to accept nothing. I know change is going to come, whether I'm dead or gone, something's going to happen when I'm gone. People didn't want the recreation center. That's one of the things from day one when I got on the board. People fought against the recreation center because it's going to raise the taxes. Your taxes hasn't went up for the recreation center. It didn't cost you any extra money than what you're paying now for the recreation center done, and it's going to be done next year. I'm happy for that. What my thing is right now is how long is it going to take for us to have something to come to us and we accept it so we can make it grow without us having to say that we've done something illegal just to get it through. We got planning boards, we got professionals sitting on the board with the planning board that has to do all the legal stuff for us and approve it so that we can say, we want to go with this. Well, we need your input. Whether it's like Mayor says, good or indifference, whatever, good or bad, we have to take your buy-in to make the concept work. If it doesn't work, then we squash it. And that's the way we're dealing with this right now. I'm saying, as I say before, whatever can help the town of Elkton grow and make it successful, we want to do what's best for the town of Elkton. And we're not doing anything just because a buyer brings something to the table. This piece of property has been on the books for years, way before I was here, way before Mayor Alton got into it. But the thing is, it's an opportunity now to be sold to someone that wants to buy it for a purpose. And your input is here. These are things that we didn't just dream of. these things that came our way and we're trying to deal with it. So I want to say that, and whatever way it goes, I'm just in support of whatever's going to make the Elkton grow and become a better place to live.
Anyone else have anything?
I like to appreciate, to say to the people, I appreciate you coming tonight. Certainly, change, as I've always learned, is something that affects everyone, and including myself, because people are afraid of change. You don't know what to expect or what's going down the road. But certainly, we are in a process, and I think everybody is going to see things differently, but we got to see the process through. This is something new that's coming to the town of Elkton, and your input has been outstanding. I know I have one consideration with this, and thank you, young lady, for talking about the school system, because kids have always been my dearest, because I worked in the system. And certainly, you talk about portables. I was in Elkton High School when we went through changes. We had a lot of portables. I sat here and thought, I was at Rising Sun the other day watching a soccer game. You see portables. Northeast High School, they have portables. They're all around except Elkton High School at this point. And certainly it's a problem, but that is the one thing, as we go through this process, I would like to see, come to a head that the kids won't be affected. But if that should come, I think the Board of Education are doing an outstanding job in, either refocusing or having guidelines where kids are going to go to school where it's not crowded. But that's what's dear to me, that does not happen with this. And we have a good board here. We're going to take everything in consideration. And we're not just here to be sitting here or sitting ducks right here. We have a process, and we're going to follow it as best as we can. Again, thank you for coming.
Gene, do you have anything, or are you done?
I'm done.
Meeting adjourned.